Hello, welcome to Confessions of a Frustrated Game Master. I am Robert, the narrator, and thank you for joining me for another episode of Confessions. So, this episode, I want to talk about a familiar scene or a familiar situation. A couple of nights ago, I stopped at a friend's house, and this is my former gaming group, the group that I left several months ago because of some conflicts and genre and setting and blah blah blah, so on and so forth. And they were playing, and I just had a couple of hours. My friend's house was between my job and my fiance's job, and we're sharing a vehicle. And I was on the way to pick her up from a meeting, and had a couple of hours. So I thought, hey, I'd stop by and see what the guys were up to. And I, of course, am not playing with the group anymore, so I'm not super familiar with what they were doing. They are doing supers. I was going to join the game, had vehicle issues, and surprisingly enough, my friend who used to only run one gaming system, Champions or the Hero system, was actually running a different Supers system. So I really wanted to be there for this momentous occasion, but scheduling, real life, blah blah blah, so on and so forth. So I was there a couple of hours checking them out, and I saw a familiar scene. And essentially what was happening is, again, not too super familiar with the entire story, but it seemed clear to me that the guys were coming up against the big bad guy for the story. And it was immediately clear to me that it was a situation where the good guys were not going to be able to just throat punch their way through the situation. And I think it became clear to me immediately, probably because, I, as a GM for this group, I've gone through the same circumstance. And they were not going to be able to just push this guy around in combat and get the job done. And I've seen the frustration, the confusion, and the disappointment in my group before when they come across an adversary that cannot be dealt with physically. And it was just really funny to me to see my group kind of still in that mindset where they don't understand that not every problem can just be throat punched. It was really hilarious to me. I didn't say anything at the point, but it really illustrates for me the mindset of some players and maybe the disconnect between me and my old group. And again, there is no right or wrong way to have fun. But what I notice from my group is that they don't like the idea of having bad guys that have to be dealt with in different ways. As a matter of fact, my Numenera game, which was the game that I mentioned in previous episodes that told me that me and my former group were pretty much never going to see eye to eye, had a situation very similar to that. They were dealing with the bad guy of the adventure, and this bad guy could not be dealt with physically, was too powerful to be dealt with physically, was too powerful to be tricked in some type of interaction. So essentially, it was either take the deal or go somewhere else. And that was how that bad guy had to be dealt with. But my players kind of don't like that idea. They don't like the idea that this bad guy has to be handled this way. They can't be kicked around. They can't be beat up. They can't be bullied. The next bad guy may be able to be beat up and bullied and interrogated, and then the next guy you can't intimidate, but you can physically handle them. And maybe the next bad guy will be a situation where you have to negotiate. So I'm going the long way of saying that as a game master, I believe that your world or game doesn't have verisimilitude if every encounter is the same. And I don't believe in running a game where every obstacle is perfectly set up to match the PC's level. I think we should run in a world that is as realistic as possible. If the players are out there adventuring or doing good deeds or whatever they're doing, not everything they come across will be level appropriate. Not everything can be bullied. Not everything can be negotiated with. However, that being said, I would never put my players in a no-win situation. In a situation where you can't physically defeat the bad guy, you can't negotiate with the bad guy, and he is totally bent on destroying you, and you have no way of escaping. It's like I would never put players in a no-win situation. They may be in a no-win in the way they want to win situation, but it will never be a situation where you can't retreat, you can't negotiate, you can't physically fight back. You're done. That is ridiculous to put players in that circumstance, even under the idea that you run a world where whatever you come across, you can randomly come across something really powerful. Everything is not level appropriate. I still don't believe in putting characters in a situation that they can't handle, because that would be no fun. The situation can be handled. It may mean you have to run. It could mean you have to negotiate because you can't bully it. It could mean you can bully it and will have to and have a good chance of surviving. But I would never put my players in a no-win situation. They can't run, they can't fight, they can't hide, they can't negotiate. That's ridiculous. But my former group, a lot of the players don't like the idea of not being able to bully NPCs. They immediately go to the rules and try to figure out, well, is this NPC built correctly? Are you using powers that actually exist? Are you doing this or doing that? Because the idea to them that their perfect creation, which has taken advantage of every rules loophole in the game, can be thwarted by the bad guy. And it was just hilarious to me to see this happening to another one of the game masters in my former group. I immediately recognized it when it happened, and it was hilarious to me, and it reminded me of the old days of my group and that kind of philosophy of, what do you mean I can't deal with this NPC the way I want to deal with this NPC, whether that be physically or negotiation or diplomacy or whatever. It just really tickled me that still goes on in my former group. And I really am an advocate for every encounter being as different as possible from the previous encounter. I try to always mix it up. I try to keep the world real, where you may come across something that is not level appropriate to you, but never putting players in a situation where no answer is ever the right answer, because that is completely unfair. But just to keep the game fresh and to keep every encounter different and to have the players flex different skills, I always try to have my NPCs different and having to be dealt with in different fashions. But my old group, if you can't deal with the NPC the way they want to deal with it, and that usually means punching it in the forehead, as my mom would say, then you're doing something wrong. If the way they want to deal with the NPC is not the appropriate way. So I just thought that was hilarious, and I'm very familiar with that scenario with my former group, and I guess in some respects is consistency and seeing that some things never change is great. But I guess not every group and every GM are supposed to play together. That's what I'll take from that circumstance. So thanks for checking out this quick episode of Confessions of a Frustrated Game Master. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are.